Every industry has its acronyms and jargon that confuse anyone on the outside. The Washington State Legislature is no exception. One of the most confusing acronyms you'll hear is NTIB. NTIB, what does it mean? You may be thinking, not that interesting, but I'll tell you anyway. In the legislative world, NTIB stands for necessary to implement the budget. But that definition alone doesn't really help. So let's break it down. The legislative session runs on a series of self-imposed cutoff dates. Policy committee cutoff, fiscal committee cutoff, House of Origin floor cutoff, all leading up to sine die, which is the last day of session.
Sine die.
The legislature is adjourned.
Bills that don't make it past these deadlines are considered dead. But not NTIB bills. They can be resurrected at any time because those bills are necessary to implement the budget. Now, you might be wondering, aren't all bills that cost money part of the budget? Well, yes, but it's more nuanced than that. To unpack this legislative lingo, we turn to former Office of Financial Management Director Victor Moore. OFM, another fun acronym, is the agency that oversees the allotment and distribution of money to executive agencies, based on what the legislature passes and the governor signs.
Bills typically have a cutoff date, and if they don't reach certain thresholds, like they don't pass out of committee or they don't get off the floor by a certain time, then they are dead. However, there are provisions made for budgets, what they call necessary to implement the budget. And that is, there may be provisions in the budget, appropriations made that require legislation in order to enact them. So those bills are not subject to the cutoff, and they can be considered right up until the deadline. So they say sometimes a bill is never really dead till it's dead. Those bills that are necessary to implement the budget have a much longer lifespan than those that aren't going to be in the budget.
So, NTIB bills generally do one of three things: create new revenue, like taxes, create savings, like tax cuts, or create financial obligations that must be funded in the budget. That might make it sound like almost any bill affecting money could qualify, but bills are not automatically declared NTIB. Legislative leadership, typically the Speaker of the House or the Senate Majority Leader, must designate them as so. If they do, the bill can, 1, be heard after cutoff dates, and 2, be included in budget negotiations, even if it hasn't passed yet. So why use NTIB at all? Because the budget funds policy. It doesn't create it.
Necessary to implement the budget means, for instance, that money is given to an agency to perform a certain activity, which hasn't been authorized in law yet. So there would have to be an accompanying bill to authorize that activity that is funded in the budget. The budget itself is not the right document to create a program and implement public policy. So the money's put in the budget to do the activity, but you need the legislation in order to actually authorize the activity.
In other words, if the budget includes money for a new program, there must be a bill authorizing that program. That authorizing bill would likely be designated NTIB. And there's another wrinkle. Sometimes a bill that missed a deadline can be revived simply by being referenced in the budget.
Sometimes bills that don't make it through the cutoff in the budget committee, there are certain procedural mechanisms you can use simply by mentioning a bill in the budget. It also becomes a bill necessary to implement the budget. So while the policy bill perhaps hadn't passed the deadline, if you then mention that bill in the budget document, the bill is, been revived.
So what's the big takeaway? Cutoff dates matter. Most bills live or die by them, but NTIB bills play by different rules, which means you don't truly know the outcome of session until the gavel falls on sine die and the ink on the governor's signature is dry.